name's Holly and I donated my milk after my son.
Good morning. Am I on? I'm good? Okay. Welcome, all of you, to Delphi 2026. My name's Daphne Asoba-Barbeau. I'm a neonatologist here in South Florida. I'm the co-host of the Incubator podcast and the co-director of the Delphi conference. Before I forget, my colleague has asked me to remind all of you to silence your phones, so if you guys can do that, we'd appreciate it. I will disclose, I've asked the speakers not to use any note cards, but I have my note cards right here. First, we recognize that many in our community are facing a storm unlike any storm that we've had in recent times, and we're wishing everybody safety and strength. Obviously, many who planned to join us weren't able to be with us today, but we're so grateful for those of you who are able to overcome that obstacle and make that trek. We are updating our agenda in real time, so we are going paperless this year. You can find everything at delphiconference.org if you want to follow along. Ben was just recounting last night that the last iteration of Delphi, we were rushing out the door as a hurricane was coming in, and we said, we're never going to do that again. So we moved the conference to January, certainly not expecting that we would encounter a different kind of storm of this magnitude. So why Delphi? People often ask us that question. Thousands of years ago, people traveled to the ancient city of Delphi looking to find answers about the future. They came with uncertainty, urgency, hope, and they left filled with knowledge. And so we're gathering this week for the very same reason. Neonatology is at an inflection point. The questions we're asking now are more than just policies and procedures and protocols. It's really about the courage to look for something new, a future that we imagine for our most vulnerable patients. So we thank you all for joining the Delphi community. This conference really was built on community. The entire incubator network was built piece by people who kept saying yes. We thank all of our speakers today, sharing ideas that will challenge us, disrupt our thinking, and hopefully inspire you to take things home. To our sponsors, we thank you for continuing to innovate for our tiniest patients, but also being here today supporting education. To Ben and Rooney, my partners in this endeavor, thank you for having the vision that medical conferences could look a little bit different. Thank you to our small but mighty team who's running around tirelessly trying to make sure that this train stays on track. We really appreciate Mark Parsons and his team who at the last minute have been able to pivot and offer a virtual option for people who registered but can't join us today. We thank our teams who are holding down the fort in the NICU, our team and your team, so that everybody can be here today. And to every single one of you in this room, we're so immensely grateful to you for showing up curious, with open minds, and ready to think differently. On a personal note, my little human is missing school today. Not because we don't think that every day of fifth grade math is absolutely critical, but because we really believe that witnessing firsthand progress happens when bright, thoughtful people like all of you gather, share ideas, and are brave enough to try something new. So I've asked her to kick off our day with a quote by scientist and biochemist Dr. Albert Szent-Györgyi.
Innovation is seeing what everybody else has seen and thinking what nobody else has thought. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Before we begin our amazing talks today, we're joined by Mercedes Arnsberg, the NSU Director of Development. We could not have made this all happen without an in-kind donation by Nova Southeastern for the use of these incredible facilities. We thank you so much for investing in our progress here today. Join me.
Thank you so much. Here at NSU and at the NSU Art Museum, we are honored, excited, and very, very grateful to have you. The work that you do is well, goes beyond saying. You're taking care of every single one of us in our littlest form. On behalf of Dr. Moon, the president of the university, and on behalf of leadership here at the museum, we are extremely excited to host you, and if there's absolutely anything that you need, just reach out to me. I'll be hovering about. And just one thing that I wanted to make very clear, Nova Southeastern University and the NSU Art Museum are a family, and we work very closely together. I myself was with NSU Health before I transitioned to the museum. So, to a wonderful conference.
I was like, I already have a mic. I'm getting my steps in. You all will have the opportunity to visit the Art Museum tomorrow, so everybody will have that opportunity around lunchtime. Without further ado, we are kicking off this year's Delphi Conference with Dr. Jennifer Fang. You can come on up. Dr. Fang is an associate professor of pediatrics and medical director of Mayo Clinic's Tele-Neonatology program, which serves 20 community hospitals across 3 states, speaking us today about bridging the distance with teleneonatology. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Great. Thank you. Thank you to Daphna and to Ben for including me in this year's conference. Happy to be here to talk to all of you about telemedicine. So I thought I would start with a scenario where you get to be the on-call neonatologist, and I am a physician in one of your community hospitals, and I'm calling you because I'm in the ED, and a mother just came in, and she's in preterm labor. She didn't know she was pregnant. She's had no prenatal care. I'm down here with our obstetrician, and she's done her assessment, and she's concerned, based on how mom's measuring and the quick ultrasound, that mom's at a periviable gestation. But she has advanced cervical dilation and is going to be delivering in the ED. And I'm calling you as a pediatrician. I'm reaching out to my NICU colleague to get your advice. Should I be resuscitating this baby? What exactly do I need to do? And while you're providing me with your knowledge, your wisdom, your guidance, that baby's born. And now I'm here with a baby that I think is periviable gestation, and I need your help, and I need to know how I should proceed. And my question for you is, would you handle that differently if you weren't trying to coach me, guide me, give me recommendations by phone, and instead you were able to connect to a device that was in the room and connect with me via video telemedicine? How you guide me, what you tell me to do, your ability to actually see the baby, look at that newborn and say, no, this baby is 26 to 27 weeks. You absolutely should resuscitate, and I'm going to help guide you through that. I think having the presence of video really changes how the care for this baby would occur. I think it changes it for me as the community physician. I think it changes what you're able to do as the consulting neonatologist, and I think it changes what happens for the baby. And this was actually our first consult for our video telemedicine program. It was very impactful, and it kind of pushed us kind of down the pathway to develop a telemedicine program. So the title of the talk is Bridging the Distance with Teleneonatology. This map of the US is showing us the distance to a neonatologist. So the darker the color, the closer you are, less than 10 miles to a neonatologist. As the colors get lighter, the further you are from a neonatologist. And so if we think about this for our patients and a woman who has a high-risk pregnancy, when you're in the center of the country, it can be very challenging to get to a NICU. Or if your pregnancy is not high risk, but you experience an emergency during labor and delivery, you can be quite far from a NICU, and these deliveries are happening in our community and rural hospitals. And that presents a challenge, I think, for our family physicians and for our pediatricians, because they are doing their NRP training. They're doing that every 2 years. They're doing their best to, maintain those skills. But we know that if you don't have the opportunity to use those skills, they rapidly decline in 2 to 3 months. And if you survey rural providers and say, okay, how frequently are you resuscitating a newborn? They're going to tell you very infrequently. Some of these hospitals only have 300 to 500 deliveries. And they may only ventilate a newborn once, twice, 3 times a year. So when faced with a newborn that needs advanced resuscitation, I think it's a real challenge for them to feel competent, feel confident in this resuscitation. And so what does this mean for our patients? I think we have the most literature and the most evidence for our very low birth weight infants, our extremely preterm infants. And we know when they are born in a hospital without a NICU, they're at greater increased risk of dying and increased risk of having serious morbidities. And this is true whether it's the US, Canada, Europe, Asia, Australia. It's been widely published that if you are a very low birth weight infant born in a hospital without a NICU, anywhere from a 50 to 60% increased odds of dying. In addition, if you survive, you're at increased risk of morbidities. The one that's most widely reported is severe intracranial hemorrhage, which then increases your risk for neurodevelopmental impairment. So I think where that leaves us is with a system that has many layers of support for our newborns. So I think as neonatologists, we all recognize the benefit of regionalization of perinatal care. We want our high-risk moms to deliver in hospitals that have the appropriate obstetrical and neonatal care that they need. But that doesn't always happen, whether it's a geographic barrier, social barrier, economic barrier. So then our clinicians in these community hospitals are working to master NRP. I know we have a lot of community hospitals in our region that are, putting in these best practices of briefing, debriefing. They ask us to join them in their quarterly neonatal mock codes. But despite all those layers, we still have this disparity for our newborns. And so I think that's where we ask the question, can we use telemedicine to close the gap? Can we use telemedicine to take all of that expertise, that experience, that leadership that's in our NICUs and get it out to these community hospitals, to these babies, these teams that need us, so we can really optimize the resuscitation of these babies from the moment of birth. So I just want to share with you some of the evidence on teleneonatology. When I'm speaking about telemedicine, I really am referencing that synchronous connection that has audio and video component between the neonatologist and the community hospital physician. So if we first think about quality and what do we know about how teleneonatology improves the quality of resuscitation, there's data from a retrospective cohort study that included about 92 infants. And these are babies born in community hospitals with a level 1 well baby nursery or a level 2 special care nursery who were subsequently admitted to the NICU. And if we compare infants who had a telemedicine consult to those who did not, and we look at the quality of the resuscitation based on various resuscitation metrics and as reviewed by 2 neonatologists blinded to the intervention, what we found is when we rate the quality of the resuscitation on a 1 to 10 scale, where 1 is a poor quality resuscitation, 10 is a high quality resuscitation, what we see is that the quality of that resuscitation is much higher for the babies who had a telemedicine consult. So you can see a median quality rating of 7 versus 4. And when we looked at the data to say, well, what is it about having that neonatologist present via telemedicine that elevates the quality? What we found is that these babies were more likely to have their temperature measured, their glucose measured, and their blood gas measured during the resuscitation. And I think all of us, who are neonatal critical care providers understand that it's important that we're monitoring temperature to avoid hypo and hyperthermia. We're screening and treating hypoglycemia if present, and if we're assisting ventilation, we're doing that at an appropriate level. If we think specifically about the outborn infant with hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy who needs transfer to the NICU for therapeutic hypothermia, we've also learned that the presence of a remote neonatologist can actually shorten the time to achievement of goal temperature. So in a study of 77 outborn babies transferred to the NICU for cooling, when we looked at the babies who had a telemedicine consult, their time from birth to goal temperature was 3.5 hours compared to 4.5 hours for babies in the control group. When adjusted for acuity, it reduced the time to goal temperature by 25%. And it was interesting with the study, we were able to kind of look at the steps in the process and okay, well, what is it that might be mediating that more rapid achievement of goal temperature? And there were a couple of things we found. First was that the transport team was dispatched sooner when the neonatologist was on telemedicine. And secondly, babies who got a telemedicine consult were more likely to receive passive cooling prior to arrival of the transport team. And so when we saw that, and I was thinking about, okay, telemedicine, it makes sense in that if I'm a neonatologist and I'm on video with this team and I'm assisting with the resuscitation and I see what's going on and I've asked for cord gases and a first blood gas, and I've actually been able to do a neurologic exam on the baby, I think I'm gonna be much more likely to, get that team dispatched because I know this baby needs cooling. I know that baby needs to come to us. And because I've been able to do my assessment, I'm gonna have more comfort in making the recommendation to start passive cooling. And when the warmer's off, I can still be there making sure we're checking temperatures and we don't get too cool. The ability to see the baby also helps us make better decisions about, does this baby need to be transported to the NICU? I think when we get these phone calls from our referring clinicians and we're just going off what they tell us, and their perception, let's say, of respiratory distress might be different than mine, it adds a lot when I can connect and I can see that baby, I can see the work of breathing, and I can provide better guidance and support for how we can manage that baby. And so when we look at neonatal telemedicine programs here across the US, most of them will show that these types of programs reduce the odds of transfer by anywhere from 30 to 50%. And in our program, when we look at all of the consults, we see that about 1 in 3 babies is able to stay in the birth hospital. And so I think this benefit of telemedicine is really big when we think about our families. Can we safely keep the baby in the community hospital and not unnecessarily separate them? And I think for me, that's one of the primary benefits. I think when we think about regional bed utilization as well, if you have challenges with capacity in your ICU, this also can really help you make sure that those babies who need the critical care beds are the ones that come to you. Telemedicine is definitely a different way of working when you pivot from, just being on the phone and having a conversation to actually kind of joining a resuscitation via telemedicine. It's absolutely a different way of working. Early in our program, we wanted to make sure that our program, our process was really meeting the needs of the community hospital physicians as well as the neonatologists. And so we sent out electronic surveys after each consult. And what we learned from our program, which primarily supports, again, level 1 and level 2 nurseries, is that this level of support, this method of consulting was really valuable for them, that they felt like, this was a useful way to consult. They felt like the remote neonatologist was collaborating well with them, which was something we were very sensitive to from the beginning. We were worried that this could come off like, oh, here comes, the neonatologist, and they're gonna be critiquing me, and they're gonna just, be telling me what to do. And we knew that we wanted to be sensitive to that and make sure this felt like, hey, we're your partner, we're here to help and assist you. So we were very grateful to see that they felt like it was collaborative. In addition, they felt like, again, the neonatologist was seeking information from them. And then another thing that we had to learn how to do was make sure when we were making requests or recommendations that we were doing it in a way that they could accommodate and execute with their more limited resources. I think I'm speaking to a lot of neonatologists, and I will just say that providing telemedicine consults, particularly during a resuscitation, is a skill that we need to develop and practice and simulate like any other skill in neonatology. It is very different to not be in the room with your team who you know well, with your resources where you can literally put your hands on the baby and do things if you need to. So this is different, obviously. You're working through a camera, you're working with a team that you may not know well, they're lesser resourced as far as what's available to them and how quickly it's available. So our neonatologists also provided feedback on the program, and they felt like when they were joining via video, they did have that shared mental model with the staff, understanding yep, this is, a baby with RDS, and we're providing CPAP, and here's what we need to plan for. They felt like when they joined, the team was giving them a briefing. I would say that the quality of the briefing can be variable. Sometimes, we need to ask questions to get the specific information we need to provide a more effective consultation. But they're sharing information. And then the one metric that you can see there, does the neonatologist feel like a member of the care team, tends to be our lower one. And I think that's just true. I think it feels, when you're on video, like, am I there? I'm, sitting in my office. So I think that is a lot of it. I think the other part of it is sometimes as a remote neonatologist, we diminish a little bit the impact or assistance we provided, where if I think I'm like, yeah, your CPAP looks good, let's just go ahead and titrate that oxygen. Good job, you got your IV in here, let's run the D10 at this. We may not think it's of a lot of value. But when we look at the corresponding survey from the community hospital, that is actually really helpful for them to know the expert is like affirming what they're doing and confirming that what they're doing is correct. So the one final thing I wanted to address is cost, because I think when you say telemedicine, like people start seeing dollar signs and telemedicine devices and IT infrastructure and project managers, which is true, you will need that, especially at the beginning. But when we think about teleneonatology from the perspective of a health system, so a birth hospital, medical transport, and a NICU, actually what we found through economic modeling is telemedicine is less costly than usual care. When you take the model of, we have a baby who's born in a hospital without a NICU, but they need a neonatology consult, which could be phone or video, and based on that, there's going to be some probability of transfer and a NICU hospitalization or not. And if you populate that model with the costs from the literature and probabilities from the literature and you run the model, what you see is that these types of programs are cost savings upwards of $11,000 a patient. And not being a huge economic modeling person, when I was speaking with my colleagues, they were like, well, Jen, it's actually quite a simple model in that because telemedicine reduces transfers, the cost that you save from avoiding an unnecessary medical transport and avoiding the incremental cost of a NICU stay is more than what you spend on the telemedicine program. So with that, I just want to let you know that we hope to have an even greater level of evidence for teleneonatology in the future. The TeleNeo trial is in progress. It's an NICHD multi-center clinical trial. I am immensely grateful for my co-investigators at Sick Kids, University of Washington, Seattle Children's, Oklahoma, and in Wisconsin. As we work to complete the trial, it is a stepped wedge cluster randomized design. We have a total of 9 NICUs, 4 of which are telemedicine hubs, and 25 community hospitals. And all of these community hospitals started usual care, no telemedicine, and then based on a randomization sequence, they're coming up onto telemedicine, all of them by the end of the trial. So it's represented a large amount of work by our study team. We powered the trial to look to see if we can have an impact on early mortality, so death within the first 7 days. And then we'll also be looking at early morbidity and the highest level of delivery room care. So we'll be continuing to enroll until January of 2029, so more to come in a few years. And with that, I just want to close with one of the telemedicine consults I did that I think I'll probably never forget, but I was on call. A video consult was requested. A mom had come into one of our community hospitals. She was abrupting, stat C-section. The team got that baby delivered within 10 minutes. And when I connected, the care team was coding the baby. And so I joined, they have the baby intubated, verified depth of the ET tube, which is correct. They were doing compressions, they looked high quality, it looked coordinated. We paused compressions, baby was still bradycardic. So they resumed CPR, and then I looked at them ventilating through this ET tube with a flow inflating bag. And I looked, I was like, man, that bag is not inflating. And so I asked them, well, what's your flow at? And they said 6 liters per minute. I was like, okay, I need you to turn that up to 12 liters per minute. I need you to ventilate the baby. Breathe 2-3, breathe 2-3, breathe 2-3. And the heart rate, just went boop, 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 and then just came up above 100. And so I was like, okay, we got the heart rate up. This is great. And then my second thought was, well, what if I hadn't been on telemedicine? Like, what would have happened? And I worry that things would have been very different. So with that, thank you for your time and thanks for listening. Oh, you don't need that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fang, for showing us that it can be done. My team is reminding me, we do have a hashtag Delphi Conference 26. The only thing we ask is if you're posting, you don't have to just post that Dr. Jennifer Fang was here. Go ahead and share something that you've learned, a pearl that you're taking away. We like to make sure that we're, continuing to provide information to the community who can't be with us today. Our next speaker, Dr. Bernard Thébault, is a clinician scientist with a focus on the translation of stem cell-based therapies for lung diseases. He's a senior scientist with the Ottawa Hospital, Eastern Ontario Research Institute, and a neonatologist with the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario, where I'll tell you right now, is a research chair in lung stem cell biology and regeneration. And today is going to speak to us about stem cell innovation in neonatal care.
Thank you very much. It's a unique privilege to be here. Since my wife decided to join this morning, Daphne and Ben provided me with the unprecedented opportunity to speak for 18 minutes uninterrupted. Innovation in neonatal care is the most exciting job in the world, but it's also the most dangerous one. As we strive to continuously improve the outcome of our tiny patients, we face dangerous reptiles to harness their healing powers. We traverse the valleys of death in the treacherous path from the petri dish to patients, and only to realize that the journey of clinical translation is much longer and complicated than we had ever imagined. Can you try to play the video? You can push one more time. Yeah. Can you go back one? I can try. Okay, we can skip it. So the video was a trailer to a Godzilla movie. And Godzilla has captured the imagination of humans for the past decades. Even its anatomy has been described in detail. Luckily, there are smaller amphibians that are amenable to study the amazing healing capacity of amphibians, including their remarkable aptitude to regrow entire limbs. This, in turn, has fascinated scientists and captured the imagination that it may be possible, if we can harness the healing powers of these amphibians, to achieve organ regeneration. And this is obviously highly relevant to our patient population, in which we face the growing challenge of preventing injury to ever more immature organs, as we push back the limits of viability. And the lung is the first organ to defy extra-uterine life, and also our attempts to achieve efficient gas exchange without causing too much harm to an organ the size of our pinky fingernail. But what if What if we can harness the healing powers of Godzilla and its acolytes? Can we achieve organ regeneration and restore healthy organs, even after established injury? Flatworms can regrow almost their entire cell pool. Zebrafish can mend broken spinal cords, and amphibians can regrow entire limbs. What these organisms have in common is the blastema. It's a cell mass that can regrow and regenerate. Mammals, including humans, don't have blastemas. But the main constituent of the blastema is stromal cells. These stromal cells are present in mammalian wound healing. And these cells are placed in the mesenchyme and interact with epithelial cells and inflammatory cells to orchestrate the wound healing response. Stromal cells can be isolated of the bone marrow, where they have been described for the first time. They can be cultured, expanded, and then harvested and studied in the laboratory. 20 years of research in neonatal animal models around the world have shown that these mesenchymal stromal cells are lung protective in animal models. But more excitingly for neonatologists is the realization that these mesenchymal stromal cells exist also in the umbilical cord. They can be extracted, and similar to their bone marrow counterparts, they have shown in large and small animal models, mimicking complications of preterm birth, that they are not only lung but also neuroprotective. These cells don't engraft. They orchestrate the response to injury by interacting with the surrounding cells, but also through paracrine signaling, where they shed these nano-sized membrane-derived particles called extracellular vesicles, or EVs, that seem to mediate the therapeutic benefit of these mesenchymal stromal cells. So here we can envision the exciting opportunities for cell therapy, or even cell therapy without the cell, using these EVs, aka nanotherapies for micropremies. But as the excitement grows, so do the dangers. Only 5% of high-stakes preclinical reports get translated into the clinic. It takes an average of 15 years for clinical translation. As a consequence, 0 new medications have made it into neonatology to curb complications of preterm birth over the past 30 years. This critical path from the preclinical studies to the clinic is called the Valley of Death. This is where Godzilla concepts go to die. But it doesn't have to be that way. We created a risk mitigation strategy called the incubator. This has nothing to do with Daphne or Ben's shady podcast. Rather, it's a clinical accelerator engine that increases the rigor, speed, and likelihood of success of clinical translation. In this interdisciplinary approach, we combine the power of rigorous data analysis in not only clinical but also preclinical systematic reviews, the power of financial foresight, the power of careful planning with retrospective and prospective cohort studies, but also the power of parents. For high-stakes disruptive therapies, it appears judicious to investigate, inquire with relevant interest holders, such as parents, what they think about injecting cells into vulnerable patients. Semi-structured interviews with parents allow to identify obstacles and facilitators to optimize clinical trial design. This in turn led to another innovation. an animated information video for parents that they can watch for 5 minutes on a tablet with family, with friends, that walks them through the main concerns that they may have in order to make an informed decision. This increases trust and the confidence of parents and increases the enrollment in clinical trials. This is the main reason why clinical trials fail. And so the translation of stromal cell therapy in the clinic has begun. So far, 5 clinical trials have been completed. They suggest safety and feasibility of injecting cord-derived cells into preterm infants. The verdict on efficacy is still out there. So we faced Godzilla, we faced the valley of death, but the path to clinical translation success is still much longer, and many challenges are lurking. While there is unprecedented potential for organ repair using cell therapies, current cell products are still at the stage of the first cell phone. The cell phone analogy put things into perspective. It took 20 years to move from the brick to the first smartphone in 2007. 20 years to develop technology. Cell therapy is biotechnology. Just for emphasis, this was cool in 1983. Not so much anymore in 2007. But this is exactly where we want cell therapy to get to. And there are many opportunities to innovate further. The cell phone analogy shares other commonalities with cell therapy. Indeed, in manufacturing, the process is the product. And you can see here very clearly the many steps that can affect the quality of a cell product, from choosing its source, choosing the technique to isolate, expand, freeze, thaw your cells, will affect the quality of your cell product, i.e., the results of your clinical trial. It is likely that with new technology, including AI, that it will supercharge biomanufacturing possibilities and accelerate problem solving. Here is a short glimpse into the future and what is possible. But first, imagine the challenge of the soccer coaches of the different countries that would participate in the upcoming Soccer World Cup in North America this summer. They have the task to select the best players of their country to fill the 11 spots on the soccer field, but also the most adaptable players that will gel into a team so that they can bring home this coveted trophy. Now imagine these soccer coaches have at their disposal a technique called single-cell RNA-seq. This technique would allow them to barcode every single player and to generate this kind of UMAP, cell clusters representing every single soccer player in their country. This then provides them with the opportunity to select and see if some of these players are of World Cup material or not. Well, this is exactly what we did with umbilical cord MSCs. You can barcode every single cell, you get these cell clusters, and then you can look for specific attributes. Here is their genetic transcription profile. And sure enough, some of these cells had a progenitor-like transcriptome, whereas others displayed a fibroblast-like transcriptome. And there's a cell in the left corner there that is a human dermal neonatal fibroblast. It's not an MSC, it's a fibroblast. We use them as control cells in our animal experiments. Sure enough, they express this fibroblast-like transcriptome. But what does this mean functionally? if we take these cells and inject them into our animal models, we can see that the ones with a progenitor-like transcriptome had therapeutic benefit, whereas those with a fibroblast-like transcriptome did not have any therapeutic benefit. So these are the opportunities for our patients. And these are exciting times in neonatal care, despite the dangers. Major breakthroughs can come from the most unexpected areas if you can keep an open mind and connect the dots. And sometimes, well, sometimes you need a little push to succeed. If this video is not working, here we go. Dare to innovate. Thank you very much. Who should I give this to?
To Rudy, please. Thank you so much. We're really talking about the future of neonatology here. So thank you so much for sharing with us. Our next speaker is Dr. Rooney Toms, a triple board certified neonatologist and pediatric cardiologist who serves as the Chief of Neonatal and Perinatal Services for Nicholas Children's Health System. He is also the third co-founder of the Incubator Network. Today, Dr. Toms is going to speak to us about multidimensional microbiome, a symbiosis essential for life and an organ of shared collective knowledge. Dr. Toms?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Daphna. There is a world operating right now, this very moment, all around us. And it's a world that is so powerful, so abundant, and so influential that we're truly just now starting to understand the power and the influence of this world. Let me invite you for a short tour into this world, and this is the world of bacteriophages. This tour really stems from years of collaboration between myself, a clinician, and Dr. Mike Sandel, who is a colleague and friend. He's a biologist, he's a geneticist, and he currently heads the Laboratory of Aquatic Evolution at Mississippi State University. We have had multiple hours of just engaging conversations around the role of bacteriophages in our environment. But we also engage in some research, shared research, where we've been able to identify phages in lymphatic tissue, more specifically in chyle, and in mother's milk. Bacteriophages exist in spaces between everything you know of microbiology and immunology. They shape the ecosystem of bacterias of the entire Earth in every aspect, within the soil, within the water, and certainly also within our bodies. And I believe that these phages potentially could help us answer some unanswered questions in medicine and pathophysiology and pathology. So imagine a universe that is just so vast that if we were to start counting a virus, one virus every second, it would take us longer than the age of Earth to finish counting them all. These are viruses that infect bacteria. And they shape, like I said, every ecosystem of our planet. For more than 3 billion years, these bacteriophages have existed. They were here long before we were here. And it's an estimated 10 to 31 particles of bacteriophages on Earth currently. And that's about 100 times, 100 million times, in fact, of more phages than stars that are visible in the night sky. In the most environments, every bacteria is infected with between 5 and 10 bacteriophages. But in some environments, the concentration is much, much higher. In ocean water, for example, there can be as many as millions or even billions of bacteriophages within 1 milliliter of water. To understand phages, just imagine this relentless symbiosis between bacteria and these phages or these viruses, which again has evolved for billions of years. Bacteriophages connect to very unique receptors on the surface of bacteria. And they land on the bacteria a little bit like a spaceship and inject their DNA. And once they inject their DNA, bacteriophages tend to take one of two life cycles. One life cycle is where they take over the bacteria's internal apparatus, start multiplying and creating many, many more bacteriophages until the bacteria can't really hold on to all these phages and pop, and a cloud of hundreds of bacteriophages will exit the bacteria and enter the environment. The other state is a so-called lysogenic state, where the DNA from the phage will actually enter and combine with the DNA of the bacteria. And this sometimes harms the bacteria, sometimes benefits the bacteria. It can actually give the bacteria information of how to become and be more resilient in a changing environment. It can actually tell the bacteria sometimes how to become more virulent if it needs to. And it can also support bacteria in developing resistance against antibiotics. So this constant infection, killing, and gene swapping really controls all the bacterial numbers in every ecosystem on Earth, from soil to water, the oceans, and of course, in our bodies. In the oceans, bacteriophages may infect or affect up to 70% of bacteria and lyse them all. So this is this enormous process of bacteria being lysed, internal cellular material being recycled or thrown out into the water. So this is its own massive ecosystem that goes on, knowing that there's so many phages and so many bacteria in that environment. So these are not footnotes, the concept of bacteriophages, but bacteriophages are truly the main drivers of bacterial evolution and population control. So humans, let's face it, we evolved surrounded by bacteria and bacteriophages. We really truly evolved in a little puddle with bacterias and bacteriophages. So we have never known a life or existence without bacterias or bacteriophages. So the gut alone is believed to contain around 10 to the power of 10 phage particles per gram of feces. So many studies have shown that the intestines are saturated with phages that really target your classic kind of commensal intestinal bacteria, like E. coli and lactobacillus and various anaerobes. And this is part of the ecosystem that we know. They help our internal balance of bacterial species. They decide which bacteria flourish and which ones are held down. This horizontal gene transfer between the phages and bacterias will really help the phages communicate around bacterial resistance and overall evolution, and also communication with the environment that the humans are in. So if we live close to a lake that might be contaminated, obviously all this information will somehow be connected with our immune system. So the connection between our internal immune system, our bacteriophages and bacteria in our intestines, and our external environment is very, very closely interconnected. And we don't even realize that it's happening. So for a long time, it was truly believed that phages only infected bacteria. But that theory is now obsolete, and it's absolutely clear that the phages in the intestines interact with the intestinal mucosa, and they interact with the bacteria, obviously, in the microbiome of our intestines. It has been shown that the phages which are in our intestines, any phage that shows up in our intestines will actually be absorbed within 10 minutes. So it will be absorbed into our mucosal lining, transcytosed, sometimes absorbed in vesicles, sometimes it'll kind of squeeze in between various cells. And it's clear that this is no coincidence. This is the body's own ability to start regulating what information they want to bring in from the outside world when it comes to the phages and the DNA that they actually carry. Studies actually show or suggest that up to 0.1%, doesn't sound like a lot, but 0.1% of the intestinal phages will actually get absorbed into our bodies. So if we were to extrapolate that number, 0.1% of our phages in our intestines, that means that every single day we transport roughly 31 billion phage particles in our bodies. We absorb them and we transport them in our bodies. So phages have been found in blood, in lymphatic tissue, virtually in all organs, including our brain, and in healthy people and in patients with various diseases. So it's clear that this so-called intraphagome is a normal part of our physiology, but can certainly also be part of a pathological process. So how do the phages enter our body? There are really two main routes in which phages enter our body. Ones have kind of been phagocytosed and transported past the cells. One is through the blood. It can go directly into the venous system and enter the portal venous system itself. The portal venous system makes perfect sense for transport of nutrients, right? It goes straight up into the liver. We know that it's not connected to the systemic venous system, but it is a little peculiar, if you want to just be curious, that the spleen is connected to the portal venous system. And the spleen doesn't really have anything to do with nutrition, right? So it doesn't really care if it gets bathed in proteins or fats. But maybe, just maybe, this system has been created so that the phages that are absorbed can communicate with recently released immune cells from the spleen and be transported together in the portal venous system, potentially communicating between and swapping genetic material, and then also being absorbed in the liver. The other aspect of absorption goes through the lymphatic system. So in the middle of every villus, there's a little kind of duct that absorbs fats. Often these are large fatty acids that get absorbed straight into the lactocele. However, phages have been shown to actually just wander sometimes through cells, sometimes in between cells, into these lactoceles. And it's fascinating because the intestinal lymphatic system actually has two layers to it. It has one that tends to focus more on the fatty transportation, and one more proximal one which tends to transport more immune cells that have been to the front line of the intestines, have a lot of experience and material from the intestines and understand the microbiome there. This is where the bacteriophages travel. So they travel in an environment that is absolutely saturated with lymphocytes and other immune cells. And in this environment, they likely communicate. And there are studies that show that bacteriophages are able to share their DNA information with lymphocytes. Most of the lymphocytes will get stuck in lymphatic kind of tissue along the way, but some of them will make it all the way up to the thoracic duct and transport themselves together with chyle and ultimately enter the bloodstream where the thoracic duct enters at the left internal jugular and the subclavian, with a very intricate type of valves that are quite unique and really not seen elsewhere in the body. And I don't know if any of you, I've never heard of a situation where actually blood goes backwards into the thoracic duct. So this is obviously a very effective system, and the way it drains also into the blood. So this is a perfect way in which the body has created a system, I will say also somewhat of a unique system when it comes to the thoracic duct. If you think about it, why would it actually join your IJ and enter the blood at that point? Because all of the lymphatic tissue in the blood or in the body tends to just kind of shift and move, and immune cells are able to actually wander from one area to another. But this is one, what I feel is an ancient kind of pathway created for this specific communication between phages and our own intrinsic immune system. In fact, phage DNA have been seen and shown in biopsies of the intestines. So they see phage DNA within the villi themselves and in the bloodstream and in all the other transported areas. When they look at the population of the various phages, there are certainly phages that have a higher population in the intestines. The same phages tend to have a higher, or similarly a higher concentration in the blood, but that's not always the case. So the DNA studies suggest that there's a selective manner in which the body chooses which phages should be absorbed and which ones should be left alone and which ones should be discarded of. So there's clear that there's a system, physical through filtration of the lymphatic structure, but also through immunoglobulins partially as well. Once the phages reach the systemic circulation, the spleen is a place where they like to go. There are higher concentrations of phages in the spleen, and they're concentrated there if you compare it to any other tissue. And this is a place where they are likely part of the mononuclear phagocyte system, where they can communicate, share information, share DNA. And it has been shown that phages can actually stimulate, upregulate, or deregulate splenocytes in how they react and how they act. But they have also shown to reduce inflammation. They can reduce the kind of pro-inflammatory cytokines. So tissue that has certain phages in them will have lower concentration of tumor necrosis factor, for example. And they will have sometimes a higher concentration of anti-inflammatory cytokines such as IL-10. Again, it's evident that they're able to influence the body by how they present. So lymphocytes, bacteria, you can imagine how bacteriophages really influence a bacterial population. So if you have a sea of bacteria, bacteriophages will, like I said, hold certain populations down and sometimes help other populations of a complex bacterial system kind of thrive. So knowing this, there's no doubt that bacteriophages can influence the power that the microbiome has over our body. The inflammation related to sometimes dysregulation in the microbiome associated with differences in phages has been shown in irritable bowel syndrome. The irritable bowel syndrome patients tend to have a higher concentration of certain bacteriophages where they will focus on certain bacteria and reduce that population, resulting in a abnormal ratio such that the increased inflammation of other populations will thrive. So the lack of suppression of overgrowth of certain bacteria can clearly result in pathology. Let me see, and these are some of the studies that have shown all of this. This unique role that the bacteriophages play is something I feel very strongly we need to incorporate into sometimes our clinical practice, right? Some bacteriophages have actually been shown to promote or be kind of a trigger for the development of type 1 diabetes. So these are bacteriophages that are prophages inside an E. coli. These E. coli are somehow stressed, and through the stress, they will create amyloid. And then the prophage actually turns into a lytic situation where they will start replicating. The bacteria will lyse, and the amyloid will come out of the E. coli bacteria, which ultimately will result in an immune reaction to the amyloid, which also coincidentally will promote the same antibodies to attack the beta cells in the pancreas. So this is one example that shows that bacteriophages can actually be a significant part of the pathogenetic process. Obviously, we know that bacteria, there's a microbiome in breast milk. There's also a clear phagome in the breast milk. We know that moms who receive intrapartum antibiotics actually present antibiotic-resistant bacteria to their babies. We feel very strongly that the phagome, the bacteriophages that the mom also present to the baby, will have a significant influence on the bacteria that actually could start colonizing the intestines. And the phages can actually help protect the baby in its vulnerable period as it's starting to really establish its own microbiome, and by limiting the growth of certain more pathogenic bacteria and promoting the growth of more natural bacteria for these neonates. It also teaches the neonate how to communicate with the outside world. So the mom, in fact, actually hand selects, or you can say breast selects, the bacteriophages that she wants to deliver to the baby. And this is likely based on the environment that she's living in, because she, through all the processes that I have explained, has the information of the bacterial environment immediately that the baby needs to potentially be protected from. So as we are learning more about these phages, we would like to just kind of look at the opportunities within our field. And I would say probiotics are incomplete if we don't talk about phages. Okay, so if we give probiotics, especially intestinal probiotics, if we give intestinal probiotics to a patient, we're giving those probiotics into an environment with billions of phages. And without seeing those probiotics in relationship with the phages that are already present, we don't even know what's going to happen to them. And we do know if you have lysis of bacteria, they can actually result in increased inflammation through release of cytokines and toxins. We do also know the microbiome in pregnancy is very important, that moms who are going to breastfeed, who are pregnant, they already see the microbiome, they set the stage. If we're going to provide any kind of probiotic for moms, we really need to look at that with a thought of being phagome aware and make sure that we are creating or providing a balance when it comes to the bacteria in the phages. Obviously, necrotizing enterocolitis is a devastating disease that we all struggle with from time to time. Phages, as we know, now know, that can regulate the bacterial concentrations in the intestines. We know dysbiosis, intestinal kind of mucosal barrier, all are aspects of risk factors for necrotizing enterocolitis. So if we were to try to create an environment that puts babies at decreased risk of necrotizing enterocolitis, we also need to talk about the phagome and phages that we actually introduce to the patients. And it would be interesting to really look at the phage concentrations in patients who actually do develop necrotizing enterocolitis and look at the potential disbalance in the population of certain phages. And maybe certain concentration algorithms could be predictors for necrotizing enterocolitis. So with this, I just want to help us reframe our mindset around the microbiome and add bacteriophages to that conversation, because I truly feel as though phages, together with the microbiome, based on our evolution, really has an influence on all aspects of our existence, our health, our future health of our babies. So I think it could help us understand a lot of pathophysiological situations and potentially even heal them. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Rooney. Thank you so much, Dr. Toms. I didn't know I was so full of phages, but now I do. Our next speaker is Dr. Nicholas Embleton, a consultant neonatal pediatrician and professor of neonatal medicine at Newcastle University, all the way from the UK. Has a very broad research portfolio, which includes growth outcomes, human milk, gut function, nutrition, NEC, and in addition, family-centered care and global health. He's also the co-founder of the Neonatal Butterfly Project, which we will have the opportunity to hear about a little bit later today. And this morning, he's going to talk to us about a really unique opportunity to support parents in lactation after loss. Professor Embleton.
Well, thank you very much, Daphne. Thank you, Ben, for inviting me. Thank you, Amber, for the organization. As Daphne said, I'm a neonatologist from Newcastle in the northeast of England, and I hold an honorary chair in neonatal medicine. And I'm going to be speaking today about lactation after loss. I'm delighted to be here. In fact, Ben and Daphne invited me a year ago, and I applied for my US visa, but apparently I'm on the naughty list. And so I had to wait for an interview. I had an interview in April, and then mysteriously, the interview was delayed 8 months to January. So I said to Ben and Daphne, look, guys, I'm really sorry. I'm not going to be able to make it. But I had my interview 2 weeks ago. I passed the bestest that anybody could possibly pass a visa interview. They said I was probably the best candidate they had that day. I got my visa in the post a few days later. I rang up Daphne. I said, can I please still come? I'll buy my own tickets. And Daphne said, you're very welcome. So I'm delighted to be here. What a wonderful conference. Feeling just a tiny bit guilty that yesterday I was walking around in shorts and a t-shirt and the rest of the country seems to be freezing. But what a wonderful opportunity. Thank you very much. I want to start off, before I tell you about lactation after loss, by acknowledging that this was not my idea. The idea really came from bereaved women themselves. On the picture here in the middle, you see Laura Atherton, who is the bereavement lead for the Chester Milk Bank, who has really driven this whole program forward in the UK, what we call the Memory Milk Gift Initiative. And then you will also see Holly, who is a bereaved mum of a baby called Bodhi, and I'm going to show you a short video from her. So I really want to acknowledge that there's lots of other people who put this together. The British Association of Perinatal Medicine produced a framework for it. You can download this from the internet. And we've got an online learning course that I can direct you to at some point in time as well. So what is lactation after loss? Lactation after loss is where women who have suffered the baby loss, either as an early neonatal death or as a stillbirth, may choose to continue lactation or even initiate lactation with the sole intention then of donating that milk to a milk bank in memory of their baby who died. And I came across it because 3 or 4 years ago I had joined a webinar on donor human milk banking. And some of you will know that I've had a major interest in nutrition over the last 25 years. And that was really the reason for joining, to learn more about global aspects of human milk banking. And there was this talk that Laura gave on lactation after loss. And when I first heard about it, I thought it was a bit strange, if I'm honest. I mean, I did think that, you know, the idea that women might want to be supported to donate milk or continue lactating when their baby died, to me, honestly, did seem a little bit strange. I think I'm probably not the only one. So I was a bit skeptical. Was this really kind of something that was going to be a good idea? May not this just somehow worsen their grief, drive them into kind of what people might call kind of pathological grief in some way? I was really a bit skeptical. And I started listening, and then I heard this video from Holly, and it completely changed my mind, my attitude for all of this. And people have obviously recognized always that when a baby dies, women have to confront this issue. What are they going to do with their lactation? For women who have established lactation, often there will be milk on the NICU freezer, and we will ask them, what do you want to do with this frozen milk? And most of the women will ask us to arrange for this to be donated to a milk bank. But women who've had a stillbirth, women who've had a very early neonatal loss, who haven't even thought about expressing, obviously their breasts go through the changes, the normal physiological changes, and they will produce milk, sometimes drops of milk that are being called milk tears. And they have to do something about this. And I have to admit, I'm slightly embarrassed that as a neonatologist, attending neonatologist for 25 years, I've cared for probably hundreds of families where the baby died. I don't think I ever once had a conversation about this. I always thought this was somebody else's job. It should be the nurses, should be the midwife, should be the family doctor maybe. So I never had a conversation about this. And never once did I think that a bereaved woman would want to lactate after their baby died. So I think all of you can kind of understand how challenging this area is, how awkward it might make us feel. As a kind of older white man, you know, what kind of conversation could I initiate or start with a younger bereaved mother? So I want to show you this video, and then we can pick up on some aspects of it.
Hi, my name's Holly, and I donated my milk after my son passed away at 41 weeks. He was stillborn. Whilst in hospital, no one told me or explained to me that I could donate my milk, something that my body was going to start producing, because even though my son had passed away, he was still going to be born, and my body thought that he needed to be fed. Whilst I was waiting for the induction medication to work, which takes 48 hours, I started doing some research about baby loss, about what my body was going to go through. And somewhere I stumbled across the fact that I could donate my milk, that I could donate Bodhi's milk. Straight away, I knew it was something that I wanted to do. I wanted to do in his name. I wanted something that I made for him to go to other babies to help other families not go through what I was going through, what I have gone through, what I still am going through. All the hospital did was offer me medication to stop my milk. And to be honest, when I told them that I was going to donate my milk, some of my family and some of the consultants and midwives, they were concerned for my mental health. But actually it was the best thing for my mental health. It gave me a reason to look after myself in a really dark time when otherwise I'm not really sure what I would have done. Who knows? Maybe donating milk in a way saved my life. Because it really did make myself, cook myself meals and, you know, be hygienic. Little things that most people take for granted, but when you're going through grief, it doesn't come naturally to want to look after yourself. So I'm really grateful that I came across the milk bank at Chester, because I tried a few other milk banks before and none of them wanted to work with me. In fact, one of them said that they couldn't offer me the pastoral help that I needed. No one needed to give me pastoral help. I was going to be grieving regardless. Still am grieving, will be forever grieving. I just wanted to donate my milk. I wanted to donate Bodhi's milk. I wanted him to leave a positive mark on this planet like I always had hoped that he would. And through my milk, through his milk, through donating with the milk bank at Chester, his name lives on. He is a little light in a sometimes dark world. His milk helped potentially hundreds of families not go through the pain that I still go through. I just want hospitals to inform all families of milk donation. And even though it seems like a really hard thing to do when a family has lost something so precious, actually it can provide a little bit of hope, and that you don't always have to tread on eggshells. Sometimes a bit of information can really lift a shattered heart just a little bit, like it did for me. So, thank you for listening.
So I'm sure many of you would have found that quite upsetting, challenging to listen to. I apologize for anybody who feels very traumatized by that. I realize that there will be people in the audience who have had miscarriages, stillbirths, maybe neonatal deaths. And many of us have been affected personally by these issues. And this is difficult stuff. All of us as neonatologists realize that it's kind of cool to talk about, you know, how great we are at saving these 24-week babies. But when it comes to talking about babies who die, it's a bit more challenging to have these conversations in the public. And miscarriage is the same, and stillbirth, there's a taboo. We find it very difficult to have these conversations. And one of my takeaways from this is just what we can learn by listening to the parents that we look after. And I will show you some video later on in the twin session. Just listening to what parents have to say to us, I think, can have a real positive impact on how we practice our medicine. And I'm very grateful that Holly came forward and fought to find a milk bank and connected up with Laura. We now know that there are hundreds of women around the UK who are now finding their way to milk banks to do this, but there is no established national kind of programs. It's not funded in any way. And there are lots of issues that the women themselves will have to confront in this situation. I mean, what impact may this have on their mental health? We heard from Holly that it was a very positive thing. Will this always be a positive thing for women? What are their own beliefs and values? What do they think about kind of the place of baby loss in our society? What do they think about breast milk? Obviously, a lot of cultural and religious factors which may impact on their decisions, lots of pregnancy factors. What's their partner going to think when they raise this up as an issue? What's their their parents and maybe other children in the families. This is a very, very complex decision. And we're not suggesting that you start promoting this, encouraging women to do this. This isn't what it's about. This is about us recognizing that women do actually have a choice. And our job as health professionals, as always, is to explain to our parents what the options are, our patients what the options are, and allow them to make the decision that feels right for them. And for some women, this will be passive suppression. For some women, it may be pharmacological suppression, but some women may want to hear about this. And I've met a number of women who knew nothing about this, who've had a baby loss maybe in the last few years or maybe historically, who feel that they would like to have had the opportunity to do this. And I've met women in the last few years since the program has become more established, really quite angry that they weren't offered the opportunity. And a lot of the women, a surprising number, come forward and say, this really helped me. It helped me make sense of what happened. It helped me start to tell my story. It helped me make something good out of something really terrible. And the psychologists talk about this as a kind of transformative identity. You start off pregnant, happy and excited that you're going to have a new baby, excited about the future and how your baby will turn out in later life. So you're an expectant parent, you're happy and excited, and then you're in this situation and you're a bereaved parent, and it is probably the worst feeling in the world. And psychologically, you have to move yourself from this place where you wanted to be, a happy parent, to a bereaved parent, and that's enormously challenging. And psychologists talk about this as the women adopting a transformative identity, that somehow this allows them to move from one state to another and make meaning of what happened to them. It seems as if people were scared to offer me the choice of donation, whereas in fact, the very worst thing that could ever happen had already happened to me. My baby had already died. I wanted the option to decide for myself. I understand why no one wants to talk about lactation after loss, but how dare they play God by not discussing choices that are available to our family? Very powerful statements from these women suggesting that all of us need to challenge our own preconceptions, beliefs, biases around what's right in the situation. As I say, I'm not saying this will be the right option for lots of women. I'm sure a huge number will not want to take this on, but some women will want to hear more. And the challenge for us as neonatologists is how do we learn to make this part of the conversations and discussions that we have when a baby dies? What's the right time to do this? When you're sat there, perhaps you've been in the room when you removed the ET tube and the baby's died. Perhaps you're the one to go back and talk about registration or post-mortems. So maybe this is a conversation for the physicians, maybe sometimes the nurses, I don't know. I think different situations will work. But as a team, we need to work together and realize that this actually is an option. For some women, it is going to be a good option. And we need to create the right infrastructure, the right learning, the right education to make it happen. What the innovators would call normalization process theory. How do we take something that seems like an innovation or this new kind of slightly quirky thing and just make it normal? And we've learned to do that around organ donation. We've learned to make this a part of the conversation. And I think we should be learning to make this part of the conversation in the very sad situation where a baby dies. And this could even be something that we take up proactively. For example, when we're counseling in fetal medicine with a baby where there's an expectation there might be a very short life, some very complex congenital anomaly or something else like this. Perhaps we should be having conversations at that stage with women what they would like to do with their lactation and whether this is something that they would want to think about in the situation if their baby dies. So my challenge to you is, what are you going to do next? Are you going to go back to the neonatal unit and pick up the $50,000 echo machine and make some lovely red and blue colors and that whooshy sound, and do more studies about PDAs. I mean, I don't know how many there've been. I learned 25 years ago that if you wanted to be a successful researcher, stay away from the PDA, because 25 years ago, nobody knew what to do, and it seems like still you don't know what to do. But it's great if you want papers and publications. It's great if you want to look cool on the neonatal unit. I mean, nobody knows really what you're doing. It looks fantastic. So that's an option for you. But maybe you will decide that you need to learn a bit more about this. As I say, we have got an online course. I would love to work with people in the US to see whether we can actually take the materials we've developed, which include audios and videos with parents speaking about their experiences and what it meant to them. And of course, I would hope that you will go back to your teams and say that you've heard about this and see who else might want to take it on. And I'm going to finish there. This little pebble, this wooden pebble they make at the milk bank, it's handcrafted and painted. And they send it out to the women who donate the milk, as well as enabling them to put the name of the baby who died, if this is what they want, on a tree that is there in the milk bank. And all of the milk banks in the UK now have signed up to it. And our job is to try and cascade this information, share it with as many teams and people as we can. The information is still not out there. But obviously by people like me turning up at a conference like this, share it. So I'd love to meet any of you. Come find me at the break. I'm happy to share all of my materials. Thank you to all the women who took part. Thank you to all of the bereaved parents who've supported my research. And thank you all for your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think we're all thinking about how we can take that extra step in our units, and thank you as always for sharing the voices of parents. We've got one more talk before lunch, so if everybody wants to just get up and stretch their legs a little bit, just move around a little bit. Okay, don't be shy. There we go. Our next speaker, Dr. Matthew Rashavi, is an associate professor and director of learning healthcare in the Division of Neonatal Perinatal Medicine at McGovern Medical School at UT Health Houston. He's also the principal investigator for several large cohort studies of births around the limit of viability, and he founded and co-chairs the International Tiny Baby Collaborative. And our last talk of the morning is neonatology at the new edge of life. Please welcome him.
Thank you. I was asked to talk today about neonatology at the new edge of life. And my first question was, well, actually my real first question was, who wrote this title? My next question was, what is the new edge of life? And also, how does a baby arrive at the new edge of life? I think we've known about the storks for a long time. Every neonatologist knows this. And a funny thing about the storks is that, at least in Northern Europe, they're only there for part of the year. They come, and they're in the spring, they're there in the summer. When it gets cold, they disappear. And so I thought about the storks, and I thought about how as late as the early 1800s, people didn't really have a good sense of where the storks went. Some people thought, this was science in 1800, maybe they transformed into mice. In the summertime, there's lots of storks. In the wintertime, there's lots of mice. Made sense. Maybe they hibernate. We knew of other animals that hibernate. Nobody'd seen them hibernating, but there's pictures from Sweden, for example, where they're thought to be underwater. Maybe that's why we didn't see them, because we're not underwater. Other people noticed other birds were predominant in the winter in these parts of the world, and so maybe they just change into other birds. In 1822, there was a hunter who caught what, and I don't speak German, but I think it's pronounced Vielstork, which means a stork with an arrow. And the arrow was weird because it was made out of wood that was clearly from trees only growing in Central Africa. And the arrow was weird because it didn't look like arrows that people used around Germany. This was in Klutz, Germany. It's still in a museum there, this bird that the hunter caught. And this was a clue. This was a sign, hey, things aren't quite what we thought that they were. People took this, and we learned over time that, of course, birds migrate. We take that for granted now. We didn't know that for most of human history. So the birds spend the summer in Europe, and they go and they winter. The stork that travels to Europe at least goes and winters in Central Africa. I thought of the stork because I think that this is where the new edge of life is. This is how babies get to the new edge of life, is that we saw something that we didn't expect, and then it changed the way we thought about everything. Something that didn't seem possible now seems possible. We have seen this many times in neonatology, and I've been very fortunate recently to have spent, through the Tiny Baby Collaborative, a lot of time with places that take care of babies born at earlier gestations than are possible at many parts of the world. And you ask the question, how did you come to do this? Why 20 years ago did you start to resuscitate at 22 weeks? And you hear the same story every single time. Well, there was this one family. Mom said, would you give my baby a chance? We said, we've never had a baby survive this early. We don't think that that's possible, but could you try? Well, we tried. We saw something different than we expected. It changed the way we thought about everything. This is the way I think it's always been in neonatology. This is an old paper, 1984. Mildred Stallman, Dr. Stallman ran the unit at Vanderbilt, set up one of the first NICUs here in our country. And I'm just going to read this. She titled the piece provocatively, Newborn Intensive Care Success or Failure. She wrote, our longitudinal data in babies weighing less than or equal to 1,250 grams at birth are clearly tentative. We have been able to observe 132 of these survivors between 1976 and 1982. As expected, the severity of illness, the effort required, and the complication rates are significant and similar to the data of others. The number and severity of complications in this very low birth weight group, the IQ, vary with birth weight and gestational age. It is impossible to draw firm conclusions about outcome at this time because only a few of these infants have been observed until 5 years of age. However, as infants with higher birth weight, there is an apparent rise in IQ with postnatal age. And she concludes, this population demands continued observation, but birth weight less than 1,250 grams is no longer a death warrant or an inevitable predictor of severe handicap. She saw something different than she expected. People didn't think babies less than 1,250 grams could do well. We've had a few of them at Vanderbilt. They did okay. I don't think anybody today asks themselves, is being born at 1,200 grams an inevitable predictor of death or severe handicap? Today, we're talking about babies born at 22, 23, and 24 weeks, and sometimes 21 weeks. These are the most recent data that we have, come from the Vermont Oxford Network. 2020 to 2022, and what you can see here in the blue is across the country, this is our most population representative data that we have for what's going on in level 3 and level 4 NICUs in our United States. 2 out of 3, approximately, 68% of babies born at 22 weeks receiving some sort of postnatal intervention. 23 weeks, it's 19 out of 20, it's 95%. And at 24 weeks, it's 99 out of 100. Survival to discharge, it's about 1/4, 1/2, and close to 3/4. And this is a big change. This is a change over just the past decade. I'm showing here the NICHD with the ACOG, the AAP, SMFM, other professional organizations here in the United States got together in 2014 and wrote guidance that we're all familiar with, the Peri-Viable Birth Workshop. These are the statistics that they cited in that paper. We've moved about a week. So where is the new edge of life? How do the babies get there? Well, the other thing I want to talk to you about is why should you care about this? It's an interesting story with the storks and with the places that are providing care to babies that are born earlier than had previously been provided care. But I want you to care about this because it's not a niche issue. It's a public health matter. 1 in 5 infant deaths in our country. In our infant mortality statistics, 1 in 5 is born at 22 to 24 weeks. In fact, I don't know of a single other condition in the United States that causes more infant mortality. It's about 1 in 500 births, about 7,500 babies per year. This is about the same number as all critical congenital heart diseases combined. Maybe you also care about this because you work in a NICU. If you're a neonatologist or a nurse, you know that this is a large part of what you do today. 1 in 50 NICU admissions, about 1 in 7 NICU bed days, and we have 1 in 3 NICU ventilator days. I'm sorry, that's about 1 in 13 NICU bed days, but 1 in 3 NICU ventilator days. This is a big part of our workload. You might also care about this because we have very little data to support what we do. I think it's a hot topic because we're all looking for the answers. We've seen some babies can survive, some babies can thrive. How do you do that? Well, if you go back to clinical trials, kudos to neonatologists. We performed over 200 clinical trials enrolling extremely preterm babies from 2010 to 2019. We enrolled over 32,000 extremely preterm babies. That's great. 450 of those, less than 1.5%, were less than 24 weeks. That's a drop in the bucket. If there were any difference in effect in that, you'd never see it. Our evidence base for extremely preterm babies is really an evidence base for babies born at 25 to 27 or 28 weeks. You can see this in this nice review from Leanne Pavlik in 2021. It is not an evidence base for babies born at 22, 23, or 24 weeks. I think you can take from that that most tiny baby care is experimental care. However, in 2026, we know that babies who are born at 21 or even 22 weeks can do well following intensive care. So we know that if you don't intervene, the outcome is clear. We know what happens. We know that if you provide some form of life-supporting care, some babies can thrive and do well. The question is, what care should we provide? What's that something? So several years ago, we got together with groups across the world who were interested in this topic and founded what we call the Tiny Baby Collaborative. This is a voluntary organization of institutions that are interested in helping us figure out how to provide the best care to babies and their families who are affected by birth at these earliest gestational ages. And there's really 3 things that we focus on. The first is that we need to understand how the most immature infants are not just smaller, extremely preterm infants. That term comes out of 1970s neonatology. Extremely preterm was called extremely preterm because it was extreme if at 26 weeks you were provided intensive care and that you survived. That's not extreme today. We need to understand in this growing elastic category how this group is different at 22, 23, 24 weeks. We also need to generate the evidence. We need to do the studies that we all are looking for that'll help us have the answers to provide effective and safe care. And finally, and most importantly, we need to engage with our families and ask them what do they need. I just want to talk a little bit about how these babies are not just smaller, extremely preterm infants. One, they are provided very different respiratory care. They need very different respiratory care. This is every single baby receiving mechanical ventilation in Sweden over the course of several years. This comes from their national data set. The y-axis shows the percentage of babies at each gestational age receiving mechanical ventilation on that given day. At 22 weeks, all of the babies are intubated. They're all still mechanically ventilated. At 2 weeks, they're all still mechanically ventilated. It's only after about 56 days that half of the babies have been effectively extubated. We see that the average baby at 23 weeks is mechanically ventilated for about 23 days, or I'm sorry, 35 days, and 24 weeks is mechanically ventilated for about 21 days. Notably, at 25 weeks, most babies are extubated in the first week. By 27 weeks, the majority of babies are not even intubated for a day. It's very different. The skin's different. We all know this. You see the skin. It's bright red, it's translucent, it's shiny, it's glistening. It doesn't look like matte skin. I sometimes tell the fellows that it looks like the inside of my lip, not the outside of my lip. It's in fact covered in a whole different tissue layer. It's called the periderm. Did you learn about the periderm in medical school? This is electron microscopy of a 24-week baby showing both periderm and keratinized stratum corneum during this transition phase. So at 20 weeks, it's all periderm. This is an embryonic covering that's in communication with the amniotic fluid. You can see actually these asterisks on the image. Those are glycogen stores on the surface of the cells there. By the time you get to 25, 26 weeks, the periderm is entirely gone, and you have keratinized stratum corneum, which originates at the hair follicles, as shown here. That has huge impacts on things like transepidermal water loss. Babies have very high insensible water loss when they're born this early. I show here old data that demonstrate that the amount of water loss from 27 weeks to term, that change, which is about 35, 40 absolute grams per hour per meter squared, we see that same inflection, the curve just goes straight up, between 23 and 26 weeks. So the 23-weeker is as different from the 26-weeker as the 27-weeker is from the term baby in terms of fluid loss from the skin. Likewise, we see huge differences in infection rates. This is a nice paper from Dustin Flannery that's impressed. He said I can use it. Early onset sepsis, late onset sepsis. Notice that about 40, 45 out of 1,000, so that's 4.5% of babies less than or equal to 23 weeks are affected by early onset sepsis. Notice that that's 3 times as many as at 28 weeks. Notice that 1 in 3 babies is affected by late onset sepsis at 22 or 23 weeks. Again, several-fold more than at 26 or 28 weeks. And finally, the size is a really big deal. It's not just immaturity, but we're limited by things like the analyzers. How much blood sample do they need? Or our pumps, how low can they run? That's a fixed quantity that's not based on the size of the baby. So if you were to use, for example, an umbilical arterial catheter, and if you run it at 0.5 mLs per hour, we've listed here, and this is in a nice paper by Johan Agren about tiny baby math, the amount of fluid volume that you consume. So in a 400-gram 22-week baby, that is 30 mLs per kilo per day. And the 3-kilo baby, that was negligible, but it's not in tiny baby math. So the collaborative has gotten together. Several of the things that I've shown you come from our reviews. We're now 52 hospitals strong in 7 countries. We continue to grow. We run a large data set, the mini study, that now has thousands of babies. And their complete NICU stays. It's a wonderful resource for benchmarking and also for doing observational data analyses. We're running our first clinical trial now in 8 of our sites. It's the largest trial ever done in babies at these earliest gestations. We've enrolled 170 babies to date, comparing different humidity approaches in the incubator. You'll see a review series here in the Journal of Perinatology and other places. We've done site visits. Some of you might be familiar with our webinars. And we've been working on family engagement. You can learn more about the collaborative at the website above. What do I want you to take away from this talk? If you are a clinician, I hope that you recognize that there are differences in physiology and management in the most extremely immature babies. We need your help. Please enroll this group of patients in the research protocols that you have at your institution. Without that, we'll always be flying by the seat of our pants. We need to get data to help guide safe and effective care. These families and these babies have the same right to safe and effective care as babies who are born at later gestations. We need post-NICU feedback. This is how we learn. All of us intend for our babies to survive and thrive. How are our babies doing when they go home? What are their needs at 2 years? Did you know that 50% of babies who are born at 22 and 23 weeks are readmitted to the hospital within 2 years? Often for a respiratory infection? Can that be an outcome in a clinical trial? That seems like something we should be following. Join a collaborative. There's ours. There are many local collaboratives that have sprung up in different countries, in different areas. Benchmark and learn from others. And most importantly, ask parents what they need. If you're a nurse or a therapist, nurses have an extremely important role in the care of these babies, and honestly, traveling to all of these sites that I have, I think is part of the secret sauce of how places do so well. Very understudied area. Babies spend as much or more time with nurses than they do in the womb. They're typically not discharged till about 42 to 44 weeks postmenstrual age on average in our data sets. Think about that. So the things that our nurses do with our babies are so important. Make sure that we have specific protocols for babies born this early that meet their particular needs. I know that when I talk to families about research, the first thing that happens as soon as I leave is that the family looks over to the nurse and says, "Hey, what do you think? Should we participate?" You have a very important role in our research culture and our ability to participate in learning with these families how to best take care of them. And please keep asking families what they need. If you are in industry, we need you. We have a problem right now in tiny baby care, and that is that everything that we're doing was built for bigger patients and more mature patients. The prongs don't fit, the navicatheter's too long, the adapter for the ventilator doesn't fit the T-tube, and we all kind of have to MacGyver it to get it to fit. There's no need to do this for the next 10 years. If we're going to continue to provide care this early, we need to partner with you. I learned on the incubator recently about new diapers to fit my babies this early. We need more of that. If you're a researcher, please enroll tiny babies in your clinical studies. Don't leave them out. But even more importantly, I think, recognize that there might be differences in effect. If you study babies born from 22 to 28 weeks, please do that analysis and check. I just showed you all the reasons to think that there might be differences in effect. I don't think that we need the same starting fluid at 22 to 28 weeks. We certainly don't at 32 and 38 weeks. We don't need the same temperature management. I showed you about the risks of evaporative heat loss that come from that insensible water loss. Ventilation needs very different if I'm intubated for a day or less, or if I'm intubated for 2 months. So we need to make sure that in those protocols that we're writing, that we're specifically checking to see if this big group of babies needs different care. And then ask parents what they need. And to end, I'd like to let our parents have the last word. I want to say that it's important to ask families their thoughts and their needs, and I want you to know that there's not a single answer. I like the way Naomi Laventhal put this. We should be extremely cautious about ever starting a statement with "parents want," as though that's just a singular approach that will meet the needs of all family. But here are a few families and what they said when I asked them.
Is there anything you would like for doctors dealing with premature birth at 22 weeks to know?
I would like for doctors to understand the significance of empathy and compassion. The emotional ups and downs can be overwhelming for families.
We have one tip for the doctors. Tell always the truth to the parents. Also when it's going a bit bad with the baby or not so good, then it's important to tell always the truth.
この子を通して今までであれば触れてこなかったような人であったりとか、そういった世界であったりっていうのに触れるようになったりだとか、そして今まで当たり前だと思っていたその価値観であったりとか、それこそ健康とか命みたいなところに関して当たり前じゃないんだなということを再認識することになりました。
It was extremely difficult for my husband and I to transition to the new normal of NICU life. We had to figure out how to be parents to a premature baby while also parenting our son at home well. It was extremely difficult to balance both home life and also hospital life. We had to learn how to care well for ourselves, for each other, and for both of our sons. There was a lot of fear and anxiety that went into our son's hospital stay. We had no idea what the future would look like, and we had no idea if we would ever bring our son home.
Und die Ärzte sollten die Eltern besser einbinden, Entscheidungen wahrnehmen, mit den Eltern gemeinsam entscheiden und Vertrauen schenken.
親としての心と体も22週、未熟で親になる準備ができていない、整っていない状況であることだったり、出産したから親になれるわけではないこと。
My other advice, and this is from experience, is to be prepared to build relationships with the parents you are working with. This will help you in giving them the good news and the bad news of daily life in the NICU. Thanks so much for your service. You are truly making a difference for future generations.
Thank you.
Thank you so much again for sharing the voices of parents and with that call to action for all of us, for our smallest patients. I'm going to give you a little bit of the run of the show for the rest of the afternoon. We're going to head back over to the Flow Hotel if you haven't been there yet for lunch. You'll have plenty of time to meet with our exhibitors. Again, we can't do this without the support of our sponsors. And we hope at places like Delphi that we've got a two-way street. We tell them what they need and they get information back from us. So that's what we've set up over there at the exhibitor tables. At each table, you notice I'll have a question posed to you, maybe about yourself, maybe about your clinical care. And every question that you answer will enter you into our lunchtime raffles. So please engage there. Shortly after that, we'll have a panel, How AI is Transforming Neonatal Care. We'll have a screening of the documenting the twinning reaction. Dr. Ben is telling me things. Yes, okay, I'm coming back to that. And then after that, a panel on the twin bond in life and loss. And if you haven't had enough of us yet, we welcome you to dinner and music and drinks this evening, also on the pool deck at Flow. Ben reminds me that during lunch and throughout the afternoon, we've got a number of people here bringing books that we think are pertinent to our community. So definitely stop by those tables, get them signed for you to take home with you. We love books. We're invested in making sure that information is accessible and equitable as possible. So those are our gift to you. All right. Thank you. The last thing I want to say, if we'll have our speakers come to the front so you don't have to go looking for them if you've got questions or comments, but please, our speakers want to engage with you as well. You can come meet them at the front of the stage. Okay? Thank you all so much for a great first session.